Four-game losing streak, it's over. The Minnesota Wild are back in the win column. We'll talk about the win, the new look top six, and what is to come for the Wild this week, all on today's episode of Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Brandon Duham, and this is Locked On Wild.
Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any of our wide array of content as the season rolls on. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us to talk about the Wild breaking the four-game losing streak, getting back in the win column, the new look top six, as well as what is to come with 3 games on tap here this week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We bring in Alex Micheletti for today's episode, and Alex, Wild won on Saturday, so you know what that means. Victory, Micheletti, Monday. It's over. It's history. The losing streak is finally done. What a game.
Yeah, I mean, you thought waving the white flag in the first 5 minutes after, 3 goals on 3 shots or 3 on 4? And Gus gets pulled, and you're like, oh my goodness, and the Rangers, they were missing a bunch of guys too, and so you're like, really, this is how the Rangers are going to come out without Adam Fox and no Igor and Jonathan Quick just playing lights out in the first period, and then something clicked in that second period, and they dominated, and it was really nice to see all the lines were contributing, and what more can you say about Marc-Andre Fleury too? He kind of just held things together, because that could have really gone off the rails. So credit to Marc-Andre, and he just brought that veteran calm presence. And you knew with the amount of shots that the Wild were putting on Jonathan Quick that eventually, the floodgates were going to open, and it all started with Ryan Hartman, and from there, they played lights out, and that last 3 or 4 minutes in the third period, that was insane. I've never seen a shift like that. Then the Wild were able to get new guys out there too, and they were so close to scoring. That would have been just electric to win like that. But they saved the excitement for the shootout, and that was something else.
Well, it took every bit of willpower in Jonathan Quick's arsenal for the Wild not to just win that game in regulation, because that stretch that you talked about, I clocked it. The final 7 minutes of regulation, the New York Rangers were able to get 1 shot on net, and they were only able to clear the puck out of their end 3 times in a 7-minute span. I've never seen anything like that before. Like, basically giving a team a 7-minute power play while playing at even strength.
Yeah, it was nuts. And the fact that that the Wild kept it, with special teams there too. They held on, because the Rangers really could have added to that 3-0 lead. So credit to clearing some penalties there, and that was just exciting. It was nice to see the building have some excitement, just because some of the past couple of home games have just been doozies, and so. To have a win at home too, I think it just it was a relief for every single person involved with that team.
And I think that's why the start to the season has been so frustrating, is because you see a performance like Saturday and it's clearly in there.
Mhm.
It's clearly in there with this group. We just have not seen it yet for full stretches of games so far this season. And again, it came after you fall behind 3-0. And so that was one of the interesting things after the game. You know, Dean Evason talking about how he put pressure on the leadership group to try to get the team back on track. And so I can understand people being frustrated at how the season starts because, like, I mean, come on. If you play even 80% of how they did in the final 2 periods, you're probably well above 500 at this point, and they have not done it so far.
Yeah, 100%. And was was John Merrill missed in the lineup last night? No. So that's another plus there that he was not in the lineup. And the decor looked a little bit better, just a little bit. So we'll take that for a grain of salt. And Damon Hunt looked decent too. So kudos for Damon for getting in there. And yeah, and what more can we say about Marco Rossi too? That was so much fun. He looks like a completely different player, and hopefully that continues to get Kirill Kaprizov going like the player we all know he is and can be. And Matt Boldy looked great again last night as well, so very encouraging.
It's the confidence for me with Rossi. And not only the confidence, he's commanding the puck when he's out there. When there are opportunities to shoot, he is, if he's open, he is asking for the puck to take shots. He's not shying away from that any bit. And it's no coincidence that with that confidence has led to him being tied for the NHL lead. Let me say that again. Tied for the NHL lead for rookies with goals in 5. He's on pace right now, and it's not a pace that he'll probably keep up, but he's on pace for 37 goals and 50 points, 50 plus points this season. I don't think in our wildest dreams we would have expected any sort of a start like this, and yet it seems like he continues to get better every game. I looked into the stats after Saturday's game. Second on the team in minutes amongst forwards, 22 minutes. He scored again. He looks like a guy that is just a commanding presence now in this top 6.
100%. And, with that confidence, he's loving being in the top 6. Who can blame him after, dealing with line mates that are not ideal for him previously, and getting to play with Matt Boldy and Kaprizov, just awesome. And another thing I pointed out on Twitter too. How about Dean throwing out Rossi, Faber, and Boldy as the trio? That was awesome. 3 guys all under the age of 22 or younger, and that was exciting to see for sure.
Yeah, that's been an encouraging thing that we've seen kind of start to build up over this year. Is Dean he's trusting those guys in key spots. We've seen Rossi get time on both the power play and the penalty kill. Saw him get time in overtime. It's clear that Dean is starting to trust those guys, which I think was one of the big things that we were hoping to see change this season. And little by little, there's a lot of work to do, but little by little, we're starting to see more of the trust in the youngsters to be huge focal points and huge leaders on this team.
Yeah, it's going to have to happen. And, especially it seems like this team is always going to just have injuries this entire season.
Yeah. Yep.
And not having Freddie for a while now, that's causing some chaos. And so you're going to have to continue to rely on Marco. And I think he knows that too. And Matt Boldy too, they're feeling the pressure, but they're thriving in the pressure. And what more can you say about Brock Faber too? It's amazing with the captain out, which, with Jared Spurgeon out, he has just stepped up in his place. And he's been the best defenseman out of all of them,
Hands down.
And he's you have Jonas Brodin and Jake Middleton that have been in the league for a long time, and he's outshining those guys. And so that pass he made on X goal was just absolutely phenomenal. And his skating, it helps him so much too. And he's the ultimate shutdown guy.
We're going to talk more about the top six because kind of overshadowed by the first line's effort again in Saturday's game was an absurdly dominant effort from the second line statistically. So we'll talk about the staying power for this top six. We got to talk about Filip Gustavsson too, because that was not necessarily all on him, but some concerns early on here in this season. And so we'll talk about all that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Game Time. If you are someone who loves to live in the moment like I do, you probably have encountered a time or two where buying tickets to an event the day of left you feeling stressed. Whether it be finding tickets that are too expensive, or in my case, going to an event and finding that your seat view is obstructed. Game Time is here to help make all of those stressful details as worry-free as possible. Game Time offers last-minute tickets plus flash deals and views from every seat in the venue. And with their lowest price guarantee, you are guaranteed to have a great time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. For tomorrow's episode, we will dive more into what we have seen from the new look lines and what we think about the potential for things to stay close to this as we move forward. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti. Alex, we talked about the top line, Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi. I was adamant after the postcast that combination needs to be the standard going forward. And they played great against the Rangers, but the numbers statistically for Matt Zuccarello, Ryan Hartman, and Marcus Johansson were even better. They had an expected goals percentage of 92% in 9 minutes of time on the ice, which is the highest I've ever seen. And what it means is that 92% of the time, if there's a goal scored on the ice, it's by that trio. And I know it seems like Zuccarello's gotten a little fire back in his game. You got Marcus Johansson, who provides just such a speedy presence, but also just some calm and collected skating out there. Oh, and then Ryan Hartman, 7 goals now in 11 games. That combination, I think, has some staying power as well.
Yeah, it's amazing how Dean just is not stubborn anymore, and look what happens. He's feeling the pressure a little bit, and then finally decides to change things up. It's amazing, and desperate times call for desperate measures, and it's worked at least for one game. That's
the beauty of it, is that you get this taste, and they're not going to play like that every night.
No.
There are going to be nights where if you roll with this as your lineup going forward, there will be losses. But it was just such a different look, and it just was a relentless attack. I think that was the thing that was just so surprising to me, was just how relentless they were at getting turnovers in the neutral zone and going right back to work offensively. Top line, second line, How about Pat Maroon, Marcus Foligno, and Joel Eriksson-Ek? That line gave you just a little taste of the grief line with Jordan Greenway back a couple of years ago. And then the fourth line just continues to do their thing too. It collectively was just, we talk about it with the Minnesota Vikings winning against Atlanta, a team win. Wild Rangers was a team win, and all those combinations looked great.
Yeah, that was a Rangers team that was on a 6-game winning streak, and
yep,
probably the best team in the East right now. And so that say what you want, no Adam Fox or Igor, but that was a team that still has Panarin, Zibanejad. The names go on and on. Kreider. I mean, these guys have been in the league a long time, and Jacob Trouba, who's just a beast. And so, that was a hell of a win, and you could see the relief of so many faces on the team, and the fan base was so fired up that when Marc-Andre when Fleury, when he stretched to stop Vinny Trocheck, that was just insane. He's almost 40 years old and he's doing that. That's absolutely incredible. And now he's 6 wins away from passing Patrick Waugh for second all time in wins. Just incredible.
And I think you roll with him against the New York Islanders, which is just a perfect segue into our discussion about Filip Gustavsson, who gave up 3 goals on the first 4 shots he faced. The numbers so far this season are not great. 2-3-1, 4.89 goals against average, and an .871 save percentage. The opening night shutout against the Florida Panthers feels like just an extension of last season. Now, I've been pretty adamant, and we've been pretty adamant, I think, in previous talks about this, to throw more of the blame on the defenseman in front, just not being able to keep any of the key areas clean. You're getting a lot of unblocked shots coming in from the slot, and even further in than that, a lot of rebounds that are just being tapped past Gustavsson. And so I'll just pose the question this way. Are you concerned about what we've seen from Filip Gustavsson so far this season, or do you think he will end up ultimately getting things turned around?
Yeah, I'm extremely concerned. It's not just a one-off of just 6 or 7 goals. I mean, it's been a continued period of just giving up multiple goals and a lot of times in a row, like back to back, and it just seems like it's getting in his head a little bit. And maybe the best thing is for him to sit out of the next couple of games and clear his head. Fleury is capable of starting multiple games in a row, and so I think maybe that's the best thing for him right now. It just seems like something's off for him, and he's putting way too much pressure on himself.
Yeah, I had thought it was a situation like we saw with Fleury last year, before he kind of settled down and tightened things up. Is you as a goalie try to anticipate what is going to happen as opposed to reacting to things after they happen. So you essentially try to read the minds of what the opposing skaters are doing, which leads to you getting to a spot, but then allowing the other team to react to that and then counterattack. And so it's a situation of just needing to, I think, iron some things down. I don't think we need to go down the road of, oh my God, what a terrible contract to sign Gustavsson. I think that stuff's all a little premature. That being said, I think you probably look over these 3 games on the road. You probably go Fleury, and then let Gustavsson go against Buffalo and see if a handful of days off, some opportunity to just look at film and try to get himself right, see if that does the trick. And if not, you have given Fleury some opportunity to get starts rolling and get into a rhythm, and then you just go right back to him on Sunday against Dallas.
You have to do something here, because clearly what's been going on is not working right now. And so Yeah. I think the breather is just what he
Yeah.
needs.
And I think what we need to see for this Wild team until they can get the defense shored up, until they get Jared Spurgeon back in the lineup, they have talked in the past about being a team that is led by their defense and goaltending. With as good as this team has looked in 5-on-5 pretty much all season, you got to flip it. And I think you have to let the offense lead now. That's another way that the Wilds can take pressure off the D-corps and the goalies, is by sustaining time in the offensive zone, which I don't know what the numbers were, but I would be willing to bet that it was something like 15 minutes of zone time for the Wild in those final two periods against the Rangers, which is absurd. Let the offense lead. Let the offense do things to help these goalies and the defensemen out, so that you don't have to put as much pressure on those goalies right now. And just see if that can help kind of bring some of these numbers down and allow Gus to stack some good performances together and get on a roll. Goalies are a position that is predicated on confidence and is predicated on getting into good rhythm. And so Fleury's got it right now. Roll with him and just give Gus an opportunity for a little extra breather to try to get himself right.
And Marc-Andre Fleury is motivated to get this record with past Patrick Waugh. It's probably the main reason why he came back for another season, is just to have that bragging rights. With when you pass a legend like Patrick Waugh, that's a huge deal. So good for Marc-Andre for getting that win, and his post-game speech was absolutely hilarious. Lots of F-bombs, but big win, boys. He said, the Gus, we were completely lost in the first period, and held it together there to get the win later. And I was laughing so hard when Matt Boldy's shot went in off quick. It was just, you could tell Boldy was smirking big, and that was huge.
Yeah, and Fleury said it got kind of lonely back there with all the time that the Wild spent in the offensive zone.
Yeah.
So again, just let the offense take the lead here for these next few games, because the road doesn't get any easier. And so we feel great now after a win. Everybody's spirits are boosted, but it is just continuing to be pedal to the metal. We'll talk about the week on tap as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can score early this season with FanDuel, and right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. If you picked the Vikings to beat the Atlanta Falcons this past weekend, probably had to sweat things out for a little bit, but boy, did Josh Dobbs come through big to allow the Vikings to pick up a big win. And if you bet the Vikings to win, you hopefully used some of those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. The Vikings will continue to try to keep their roll going next weekend, so make sure to throw some of that down on Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Probably see Josh Dobbs at quarterback again. Lots of great options to spend those bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Seth Topal joined by Alex Micheletti. And so you finish the Rangers off in a shootout. You get to play them in less than a week. The road for the Wild this week includes at the New York Islanders, at the New York Rangers, and at the Buffalo Sabres. And these three teams all having varying levels of success or lack of. But it's an Islanders team to start it that has some pretty intriguing pieces. They've got great goaltending, obviously. They play a little bit of a slower style, which should hopefully help the Wild, but none of these games are cakewalks. Even the Buffalo Sabres, who the Wild will play on Friday, they're capable of scoring a ton of goals. They're off to a slow start. You don't have to tell the Wild how difficult it is to play against them. Just ask them how things went last year.
These teams are just pain in the butts to play against. We've talked off air. It's just, I mean, especially the Islanders too, because they are the most anti, fun to watch. They rely on Sorokin so much, and they just kind of lull you to sleep, and then pot one or two, and then shut things down. And so that's a frustrating team. And then Tage Thompson, what more can you say about that guy? They just
unreal.
Yeah, and old friend Alex Tuck, and Jeff Skinner and Rasmus Dahlin. So I mean, it's just tough. It does not get any easier, and then we'll eventually play Dallas too. So that's it's a tough stretch. There's no off nights, and
No.
you can't just feel good off this one win. That's this Central Division is just a meat grinder. You see, yesterday, Ryan O'Reilly gets a hat trick against Edmonton. They just, there's teams that are, it's chaos. Colorado's been shut out, a couple times in a row, and just strange. It's just it's a wild start to the NHL season. You can't make anything up. You have a Vegas team that just got their first loss, and then San Jose that doesn't have a win yet. So it's just, you never know what's going to happen in the NHL.
I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that the San Jose Sharks continue to lose, or the fact that they continue to give up 10 goals a game. Both are equally.
I've never seen double digits back to back. I was like, oh my goodness! And they were at home. Imagine being a season ticket holder and you see those back to back performances. It's tough.
I have a feeling I would probably be a former season ticket holder at this point, based off of how things have gone.
Sell my tickets.
Yeah, they played the Pittsburgh Penguins last night. Oh, and they lost that game by a score of 10-2. After losing 10-1 to the Vancouver Canucks, so you get outscored 20-3 in a 2-game span.
And they play Edmonton on national TV on Thursday. It's like, how are they on national TV? And they have the chance to do the funniest thing ever, is to add to Edmonton's misery and get their first win, which would.
Could you imagine?
Goodness. I don't know if Ken Holland or Woodcroft. I don't know if both of them could make it if they lose to that team.
The only team that has given the San Jose Sharks a point this season, the Colorado Avalanche.
It makes no sense. That adds to this beginning of the season where it is chaos.
Yeah, hockey is weird.
It
preposterously
is
weird.
Yeah.
The Wilds, I think it's important for this Wild team that they can have 4 lines that are equally capable of performing well, because they're going to be on the road for all these games until Sunday, when they will play the Dallas Stars at the X. But you've got the likes of goalies such as Ilya Sorokin or Semyon Varlamov, both off to great starts for the Islanders. You've, of course, got Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick for the Rangers. For Buffalo, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Devin Levy, or Eric Comrie. And then, of course, Dallas, Jake Ottinger, Scott Wedgwood. So it's going to be imperative that the offense does their job, because these are tricky goalies, except for the Sabres, that they'll be facing here over the course of the next week.
Yeah, get the shot totals up. We saw what happened with Jonathan Quick. He had his moments of the vintage Jonathan Quick, but he's an older goalie. But you just gotta get the shots. Cause havoc in front of the net. The Wild, they aren't the most skilled team, but they have guys that grind for goals. You saw where Ryan Hartman scored. You saw where X scored. They like to battle, and they like to just wreak havoc in front of the net and slam home pucks. They just have to keep doing that and stay out of the box. That's the number one thing, because you're going to be playing some amazing skilled power plays, especially Dallas. So stay out of the box.
How about Zuccarello's goal against Quick, where he was just waiting on one side of the net, and it was a shot essentially directly to him. It basically was a pass, and he just chip shots it top shelf. I was like, come on, that's not fair.
No, it's what are you supposed to do there? And,
yeah.
That had to feel good for Zuccarello. He's former Ranger, so it's always nice to get those bragging rights for sure.
Most definitely. The analogy that I will use for the Wild over the next week is, if you're trying to break down a door, in order to do so, it is easier to do that hitting it up close, as opposed to trying to break it down 10 feet away. So attack in close and up the volume of shots, crank that to 11, and the Wild should be fine if they can do all that. And hopefully they come away with 1 or 2 wins on this trip, maybe 3. But at this point, we can't really be choosy. We'll take whatever we can get.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Well, that will wrap it up for today's episode of Locked On Wild. So, as always, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Make sure you follow along on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube, so you don't miss out on any new content as we move through the rest of the season. We've got pregame, postgame, as well as episodes throughout the week with special guests and more. So make sure that you follow along with Locked On Wild so you don't miss out on any Minnesota Wild news or notes throughout the year. We've got new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.